Thank you everyone for coming. I'm very happy to see that so many people are interested in what I've been doing, which isn't a lot, but I'm still flattered nonetheless. My name is Kendall. I don't think I've met all of you, but I hope to maybe after. And so for the past couple of months, I've been helping out with the Archives Committee. And I was doing some interning, doing cataloging, and some little research bits and bobs. I'll get into that in a second, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what it is that I do now and how I fell into it. So now I am a record specialist at the City of Charleston. Today was just my 1 month anniversary of being there, so it's still very new. So I fell into this. I've always loved history. I don't know if it was nature or nurture. My parents always took me on trips to museums and walking tours. I'm going toward nature though, because my siblings were on the same tour, and I'm the only one that got So, but they also loved history and really nurtured that. And so I've been working with museums and collections since before I could drive. I was volunteering at local museums and historic houses and carried that with me through college because I just had in my head that I wanted to study history, that I wanted to be in the public education sphere of some sort. I didn't know what yet, but I found it soon enough. It was my last year in high school when I worked at the historic John Jay House in New York. And that's where I did some researching for one semester and wrote tours for the site. And the next semester, I was doing collections management, which is what I ultimately ended up doing. So I guess that worked out. After that, I went to Wake Forest University for undergrad, where I did history and also minored in political science and art history. And while I was there, I continued doing researching and history classes. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet, but I knew history was going to be at the focal point of that. And it wasn't until I really started working at the Special Collections Library that I was like, I know what I want to do. And it's stuff like this. I love playing with old books and being able to research and help other people with their research projects. And that's when I was sold, basically. So I worked there for, I think I got the job right before COVID, so I lost a few months there, but I was back. And then that's what sold me on getting my master's degree in information studies. And so I did a year-long program at the University of Glasgow, where I studied information management and digital preservation. And so I came back after that. I'm sure you can imagine with other family members that there wasn't too much going on after that, and that I needed to be at home for a few months while I looked for a job to transition into. And so in that time, I was working with the Dewees Archives, and it made me realize how much I really loved the Charleston history and all that's going on here, and I love all the different organizations that are here and all the different stories that are there to be told. And so I'm very happy that it led me here and that I get to stay here, a little bit downtown, but I'm still hoping to find more information on Dewees while I'm getting connected with all the different museums and libraries in the area to try to find out more about this little island. So one of the things that I was doing here was cataloging what we already have. Other people in the Archives Committee had foldered and put in order a lot of the company, the Seawed Inc. company that owned the island, Capers Dewees Trust, those documents. And so I went through those and I cataloged those on a spreadsheet. Other things I did included just researching whatever I could find and organizing. But one of the most interesting things that I found were these affidavits that were written in the 1890s, and these were digitized already. The story goes that someone who found them, I think they were in his neighbor's attic or something like that, so be sure to check your attics and your neighbor's stuff for interesting tidbits of history. But we found these 1890s affidavits that talk about what happened on this island during the War of 1812. And these are original handwritten first-hand accounts, well, I guess second-hand accounts, from previously enslaved people on the island, talking about what they saw and what happened to the family that was living here at the time, which was the Dewees family. This was the Dewees plantation for a while. It traded hands a lot. It would trade hands afterwards too, to get into the Dewees family. But in that couple decades, it belonged to the Dewees family, who had a plantation here, and they were harvesting palm trees to be sold in Charleston markets. That would be used for forts, such as Fort Moultrie, and other structural elements such as that. So this was a logging plantation for many years, and I want to say over 30 people were enslaved here at any time. I have found archaeological surveys done in the 1970s and 80s that say that they were on Lot 1, I believe, that these slave settlements, this house that they would live at would be on Lot 1. And what else we found was these first-hand accounts that went into the attack that this family went through in the War of 1812, where the British came and they tried to ransack the island, and they tried to take any boats, any enslaved people, any supplies that they could. And so one of these accounts I have brought with you all to read and look at. It includes images of the original handwritten document from the 1890s, as well as the transcriptions that myself and my parents helped out on. And there are more accounts like these. I think there are about 7 accounts total that talk about what happened. And all of these people are in their 90s or over 100 years old when they're giving these affidavits. So not only is this a great testament to the strength that these people had to not only have lived through enslavement, but to live long, happy lives, hopefully, afterward. And so it's very interesting to me to find these types of stories. I love finding these stories of people who couldn't otherwise have their story be told, or people didn't listen. And so I would love to find more items such as these, but unfortunately they're stuck in some neighbor's attic, so please look for more of them. So hopefully you all get a chance to read that. It's a very interesting story about how the British came and attacked the island, and this person, his name was Toby, he talks about how his father was abducted and taken into slavery, and he was from West Africa, and he mentioned the river that his father was born on. I cannot read the handwriting completely yet, but I'm figuring that out. I'm still trying to find more sources on where Charlestonian enslaved people came from. I know a lot of them came from modern-day Angola, but I would still like to find more on this village that he talks about, because these are the lost perspectives that we have. And so Toby talks about how he was enslaved by John T. Dewees by way of his father being enslaved. And he talks about how he defended the island alongside John, that it was him and John defending the island from the British at the time of the attack. People were fleeing, people were taken onto boats, and they were trying to fight back for their home. At least John was. I'm not sure what the motives for everyone fighting back was, if it was just personal safety or how they felt about it. We don't know. We only know that in this account that he discusses what he went through. He mentioned Dewees Island by the name Dewees Island, although he does say that it was at the time Deweesian Island. There are a few other accounts that say that as well. Trying to see if there's anything else. It's a really great story. I chose this one because I was so interested in the fact that he talks about where his father came from in West Africa. That's something that's very rare to come across in these accounts from the descendants of enslaved people. A lot of the time, they don't know where they came from, or they don't even know what their name was prior to enslavement, but he asserts his African name, and I think that's very beautiful to see in something like this. It's such a sad story that he has his identity that he's also defending, not just the island, but himself and his legacy. And so while the story may be about the damages to the island and how they want however much money in the 1890s to recoup from the damages, it's also a beautiful story about learning about the people on this island that we have never heard about before. We know about the Dewees family. Some of us may know about the Deweesian family, but we don't know Toby. We don't know his father. We don't know the number of other enslaved people that gave their accounts in their 80s and 90s about this island. And I think that's something that's worth exploring, and I hope to find more information related to that. So hopefully you all can read that while it goes around. I wish I printed more copies now. But
we'll digitize it. We'll put it on the web.
Oh yes. So these items are also on our Dewees Island Archives cloud-based drive. I made a Gmail account for the archive so that we can take advantage of the online storage space so that we could have access to and share these items with each other. So I'm more than willing to do that if you'd like to see all of the accounts. Come see me after and I'll email you access for everything. It's been really fun to read these, and hopefully I can find more, but that's where hopefully you all come in with whatever interests you. That's what the glory of working in archives and working in research is that it's completely up to what your interests are, what your passions are, and what story you want to find and tell. And so that's also what's great about archiving, is that we can share our personal story. So I think that maybe people think that archiving or archives, repositories are just for big fancy collections, big fancy museums with a lot of stuff. But families can also have their own archive. Things like your family Bible and correspondence and birth certificate. That is all part of your own family archive. And if that's something that you want to keep, you absolutely can and should do that so that you can tell your other family members of the stories that you find within your own family tree. And so great ways to do that, if you're interested in archiving at home, would be to date everything. I don't mean take it out to dinner, but I mean put the date on it. And we love that. We love on photographs, we love names on the back of photographs so we know who's in the photo. We love knowing when people were born, all those crucial moments. One thing that we hate, however, is metal. We hate staples and paper clips. That stuff rusts within 10 years probably on a climate like this, so you can just remove those too when you're going into your family archives. Leave notes for your family members too. Talk about your own life, give your own biography, and that is a great way to do a family archive. It's just sharing a story. It doesn't have to be in a fancy museum. You don't have to have a cannonball from the Revolutionary War to have a really cool story to tell. So I hope that's something that you all choose to pursue in the future.
We have people ask questions.
Yeah, a question for sure.
So the affidavits are given in 1890 for the reparations of the War of 1812.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. So he wanted to go back and he said, hey, remember what happened 70 years ago to my father? So what I think happened is that in the 1860s, I saw this today, so I need to find more sources, was that there was a fire in 1864 on the island, and I think he was hurting from that, and I think he needed reparation from the damages that happened in 1812. I think that's what happened. But that's to be determined. I'm not really sure.
Did the British actually pay any reparations?
I don't think they did. I haven't found any evidence that says that they did or didn't. I would be very surprised if they did at all. Is there any other questions? It doesn't have to be just about the Elysian.
So one of the things that we talk about a lot is the fact that people can come up to the high tide line on our beaches because we're missing some piece. some, is it title or
I think the King's Grant.
King's Grant?
What are the most fascinating artifacts that you feel are part of the Dewees collection? Like what are some of the things that really stand out?
I think this is definitely one of the top of the list, are these affidavits.
Okay, what about like objects?
So object-wise, there was this book that I found from the Seawed Incorporated, and it was from the survey they did on the island in 1975, I believe. And so there are photos of people doing the surveys, taking different points around the island.
It was an archaeological survey too, right? It was when they were
Yes.
doing, they actually did digs in the 70s.
And that's how we found evidence of the enslavement house on Lot 1. They had a few other things in the survey. That was the most interesting takeaway for me. They also found little bits of pottery pieces in that survey, which are in that room over there. I think, did they find a cannonball during that? Or?
Esther found it on the North Beach. Called the fire department, asked if it's safe to put in the museum. And they got in boats and came out here with the bomb squad and investigated Esther's cannonball. And somehow they can tell that that cannonball dates back to the Revolutionary War. And that this is where the Revolutionary warships that were going to try to invade Charleston Harbor all amassed right here off the coast of Dewees. So the cannonball is one of my favorite things in there.
Kendall, is it possible to track how many people lived on the island through like history? So if you just kind of graphed it, in the 1800s there were 10 people. In 1822 there were 40 people, whether they were enslaved or free.
Right.
And just having, it would be interesting to see like what's the population in a different time in history.
Right. So I've been looking through the censuses from the late 1700s into the 1800s to try to do that. There are a little gaps in them. I'm still trying to find all of them, not all of them. All the censuses are online, and then sometimes they're not full of the most information. Sometimes they'll just have the head of household rather than the wife and kids, or they may not have all the enslaved people accounted for. So I'm still trying to find information on that. But yeah, there would be probably 2 or 3 white families on the island at a time during the time of slavery and the logging, the plantation. I know the names of a few of those families. I just don't know the amount of people that were here. And then also, since so many people went back and forth between Charleston City and here, it's very possible that they had family or enslaved family members in both of those households in downtown Charleston here.
What about that? I know Judy posted that, the runaway slave murder mystery.
It's the same family.
Right, the Dewees name, so that was the one who was trying to collect.
Yes. So what's interesting about that family is that John's, I don't know, I think it was his son, was Francis G. Dewees, who was the sheriff at the time, and he was also involved in a big court case in Elkinson versus the Dewees.
He was the sheriff, and he boarded the ship in the harbor.
And he took off
someone.
someone.
And he free black people on the ships in prison now.
Yeah, so that's someone that I'm still trying to do more research on, Francis G. Just because he's interesting, because he was the sheriff, and he's in a position of power to capture runaway enslaved
And he
people.
got a cut for it.
And got a cut for it, so that went back to the island. And so it's interesting, not only just for Dewees history, but it also played a role in the lawmaking of the early United States. So that family is very interesting. We probably don't talk about them as much as we should.
I have a totally different area I want to talk about, is your process. You processed a whole lot of paper.
Yes.
Okay. Would you explain that in 10 words or less?
Sure. Maybe not 10 words, but I would get a file on my desk, basically. And so a lot of these files were put together before the time of putting things on computers. So they just might have a collection of like copies of papers or even the original. And so what I did was that I would put in the key information onto the computer, such as the date and the names involved, vaguely what it's about, the title, and then any like physical notes about it that might be interesting, whether it's damaged or it has this embossment on it or a signature. I kind of make note of that so that people are able to go online and search for things, whether it's a name that they're interested in or any sort of whatever happened in this year or any laws related to. So I'm just trying to take those key points of information just to make it searchable so that people don't have to go through every single page like I did and instead can sort of take a quick glance at what we have. So that's how processing works. It's just taking the big key information and making it into more bite-sized chunks, more understandable, more searchable, and just not wasting all your time.
And what happens to those originals?
What happens to the original?
The originals.
So I did not get rid of anything other than like really bad copies of things. So we have all of our original documents. So for the case of the city of Charleston, what we would do then is that sometimes we would completely digitize the item, put in those information and put an image in. And then if it's not really a substantial part, it's usually like municipal government, you know, it can go in the trash. It's not like a King's grant where we like need to hold on to it. So it depends on whether or not those are kept or not, depending on how people would use them and how important they are. So it's just completely dependent on what the target audience uses these things for.
Well, do we have to store those originals then?
So for what we have right now, yes. So we still have all the original. I do know that there was this idea, I know Lori wants to stuff out of there. So she's looking at long-term storage options for those original documents so that they're protected from hurricanes and other inclement weather. And so that will probably be a longer process because we need to scan everything before it's relocated, unless it's stuff that no one needs really. But we would still need someone to have access to the storage item. And there are places that have specifically temperature controlled, humidity controlled. That's just the best place to put archival items and artworks and all that. But there are a few options with that, but that might be a bigger project to kind of work on. So in the files that I looked at, there is a lot of genealogical information on the Dewees family, going from all the way back when they were in the Netherlands to all the way into the 2000s. We have pretty much their entire genealogical information.
And you have some of the relations that ended up in Philadelphia?
Yes, so there is some of those people that were born in Pennsylvania and came down here. We do have that also in there. I think the two families that we have a lot of genealogical information for would be the Dewees and the Heilers. I'm still kind of working on the Deweesian family tree as best as I can to try to trace that. Because they also intermarried with the Poyas family, which is they also lived on this island and owned enslaved people at this time. So I'm trying to see where everyone connects and where everyone diverges.
How do you spell that?
Poyas.
Use AI or implement AI in what your research is or add to it?
I think the best point to AI would come in would be with transcribing things. So when I was in grad school, we worked with a program called Transcribeth, which was an online software that would transcribe handwritten material, which was great because it's a headache to do that. That's where I can really see that being helpful. But other than that, collections take such a subjective and human-based analysis to it, and it's also so heavily based on how the public uses items that informs how everything is structured and how everything is preserved and used. that I don't see that being replaced by AI, but maybe just the menial stuff such as transcribing.
Kendall took what was a big haphazard file cabinet full of stuff and turned it into something that is actually catalogable and usable. And the information that she has about these affidavits from the late 1800s, none of us knew were there. So this is really exciting stuff that she worked really hard. I don't know whether you ever came by the landings building between like 4 and 9 or something. She was there every day. And she took all of our metal staples and replaced them with plastic things. She made sure that like some of those files might have 70 copies of one worthless document and one really good copy of something else. And she made sure that all of these things that we can use them going forward. And this was just such a wonderful contribution to our understanding of who we are that we just can't thank you enough.
We decided to thank you. And decorate your apartment at the same time. So thank you very much, and if you have more questions,
Barb, we'll see you.